Hey y'all, who dat and what is up? I am Jeff Nowak. This is Inside Black and Gold, a preview edition getting you ready for Saints Week 6 hosting the Patriots. The Saints 1-4, the Patriots 3-2. Both teams coming in feeling good about themselves. And for the Saints, the first time all season, they're going into a game off a win. Can they carry that forward? Can they figure it out? We'll have to wait and see. I think this is a matchup that suits them reasonably well in a few ways. And we'll get into a lot of that. We're going to talk about the injury report. We're going to hear some clips from Drew Brees. We're going to hear some clips from the coordinators, Kellen Moore, on a few key points for the matchup for the Saints this week. All that good stuff. We're going to have an interview with Patriots beat writer Christopher Price, been covering the team for 2 decades. So a ton of great insight from him. That'll be in the second segment. And then finally, we'll close things out with X Factors as we do. But again, I am Jeff Nowak. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button. Ring the bell on YouTube at WWL Sports. You can follow me at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow Steve at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. And without further ado, let's get into it. Week 6, baby. Woo! And we are back on this preview edition of Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak coming at you solo for the opening here, as we've done with the last few preview episodes. We're going to bring in Steve Geller for the final 2 segments. But first things first, we're going to go over the injury report. If you listened to the mini episode yesterday on Wednesday, the big news: Chase Young back to practice. He was limited Wednesday. He was limited again Thursday when he spoke with the media. He said he was optimistic. He's hopeful that he'll be able to get out there on Sunday. I'd be surprised if there isn't some level of a pitch count going. You know, when he spoke about the injury, he did mention that they were being very cautious. Calf injuries can linger. They can be re-aggravated. They can turn into bigger things. And I think the goal here for the Saints and Chase Young was that when he did get on the field, he was ready to go. It was not a question of, is he playing through something? Is he dealing with that? And this is a bit of what Chase had to say when he talked to the media.
All right, Chase, back practicing this week. Just how we feeling?
Feeling good, man. Good to get off the getting off the bench. Feel good. Just getting off the bench, going out and practice. Happy.
What's been the hardest part rehabbing this injury?
Nothing really too hard. Just taking everything day by day. Yeah, not too hard though.
Is there anything difficult, like the timing of it? Obviously, it was like right before the season, and then kind of holding you out a little bit longer maybe than anticipated.
Yeah, I mean those things you can't really control. So I just control what I can control, and that's just getting right. And that's what I'm doing my best to get right.
Was it longer than you anticipated?
No. It was kind of I would say group decision. A lot of people you see with the calf can re-aggravate it. So we're just making sure that won't happen.
Yeah, and I think that's a game changer for the Saints on the pressure front. We'll have to wait and see. I think he's going to play a big part on the Saints getting off the field on those pass rush downs, those 3rd and longs that they struggled with early in the season. I'm excited about it. I think he's going to fit this defensive scheme really well. And this is what Brandon Staley had to say. He was asked about, okay, is this going to be kind of a rotation? Are you going to try to dedicate more time to individual players? This is what he said.
It's going to be good to have guys that can finish on the quarterback for sure. And I think those guys have proven that they can finish. And, anytime you add someone like a Chase Young, it's going to add a ton of production to your unit. And it's going to help everybody do their job better in the front too. So look forward to having him out there.
Yeah, and so we'll go from there. We're going to have to wait and see. I do think it's going to be a rotation, particularly early on. And I don't know if what we see on Sunday against the Patriots is necessarily what we're going to see throughout the course of the season. But I do think that Brandon Staley believes in kind of the rotation dynamic. I don't think he's ever going to be at the point where it's like, yeah, we have Chase Young and Carl Granderson. We're just going to leave them out there for 98% of the snaps. Like, no, you're going to see Cam Jordan work in, particularly on rundowns. You're going to see Chris Rump. You're going to see these guys. It just adds a piece to that puzzle that you haven't had. Speaking of pieces to the puzzle, 2 players were upgraded for the Saints on Thursday, and that is good news because it is Justin Reed who is going through the concussion protocol. One of the major steps, one of the main steps of getting through the concussion protocol is getting through a full practice. And then after that, you can get cleared by the independent neurologist. And so that's where I think you are in the process now. Getting that full practice in on Thursday is a very positive sign. So I would expect to see Justin Reed out there on Sunday. You never know. You got to kind of wait and see. Some of these steps can be tricky, but I feel like this is a really optimistic sign. And that's a good thing for the defense. Like, I know the young guys got in there and played well, but don't fool yourself into thinking Justin Reed doesn't have a very important role on this defense, particularly in the communication part of the game. And they are much better for, like, I get it. They got 5 turnovers last week, and that's fantastic. This is a better team with Justin Reed on the field. So it's a good news to have him back. And whatever people want to say, the same thing holds true for Cesar Ruiz. They are a better team with him on the field. And he got back to practice. He was upgraded to a full participant today, which is a surprise to me. You know, an ankle injury, and it looked like a pretty nasty one. He's battling through what was a pretty nasty looking injury, but that's a good sign to be upgraded to a full participant on Thursday. You're obviously going to have to wait and see how his ankle kind of reacts to that full practice. But anytime you're a full participant on Thursday, it's a pretty good sign that you're going to be active on Sunday. So all things considered, it appears that the Saints could, in fact, have their starting offensive line back on the field intact for week 6. And, you know, the last time the Saints had their starting offensive line on the field, you went up and faced the Bills and you ran for 118 yards in the first half. So it's a pretty good sampling of what you can hope for. And the Saints are going to hope to be able to run the ball effectively against the Patriots. Again, it's a much tougher run defense than what you had in the Bills. But again, anytime you can say we have our 5 starting offensive linemen in the game, that's a good thing. And it's not something the Saints have been able to say all that frequently over the past several years. So good news there. Devon Godshaw was added to the injury report again for the second straight week on it's rest again. That's probably just going to end up being what is Devon Godshaw. You're going to have him on a program. You're going to have him on a rest day. Nothing, in my opinion, that would be concerning. Expect him to play. Ike Adam, again, was the only DMP. They did add Michael Davis, veteran cornerback, familiar with Brandon Staley. So I don't expect Ike Adam to be out there. We'll see. Maybe he can get back to practice on Friday. Wouldn't hold my breath. And logic would dictate that Quincy Riley is your starter regardless. We just won't know until Ike gets back whether that is in fact what's happening. I'd expect Quincy Riley to start. Again, a few others. Jawan Johnson dealing with that ankle injury. He was limited. Trevor Penning upgraded to a full participant. Another good sign for the Saints. And then the final injury we'll talk about, Alvin Kamara, dealing with an ankle injury. He did talk to reporters about it today, said it was something that occurred in the first half against the Giants. Nothing particularly major. Obviously, he finished the game, but it did kind of act up a little bit of soreness on Wednesday. So, you know, they kind of eased off it a bit. He was limited again on Thursday, but does not sound like it's going to be anything that keeps him out. So there you are. That's your injury report for the Saints. Anytime you can say there's only one player that looks like they're going to get ruled out on a Thursday, that's a win. And so you talk about, hey, the Saints needed to figure out their injury issues. This is a very positive sign for them that you have a lot of names on here. One was a rest day. 5 of them were full participants. And the other 3, you can be pretty optimistic that all 3 are going to play. So here we are. On the Patriots side of things, you do have some concerns. Antonio Gibson, you know, we knew he had a knee injury. Sounds like he's going to be done for the year. He wasn't on the initial injury report when they set it out. That was just a mistake. It was an omission. He's a DMP both the first 2 days. Otherwise, Anthony Jennings, linebacker, was downgraded to a DMP for the Patriots. You also had Christian Barmore, defensive tackle, upgraded to a full participant. He got a rest day on Wednesday. The one to watch is Christian Gonzalez, cornerback. He was added on Thursday with a hamstring issue. He was a limited participant, which that would indicate that that the injury happened during practice. And Christian Gonzalez is obviously a very important piece for this Patriots defense. If he's not out there, life gets a heck of a lot easier for the Saints. So that's just going to be one to watch. And, you know, you're still going to have to game plan for him being out there if you're the Saints. But they may have caught a break there. And this is the time of year where you're going to end up with some matchups with teams that are just simply not the team you expected to play, whether it's a quarterback injury, whether it's a running back injury, whether it's a decimated offensive line. Like, you're going to run into matchups where, yes, on paper, full depth chart, this might be looking one way, but then the team you end up running in is not the full version of that team. And suddenly that matchup swings because of it. We know, following the Saints, what that looks like on the Saints side. We've seen it way more times than we want from the Saints side of the equation. So I don't know. Maybe injury luck is evening out. I don't know. Maybe you're getting some regression to the mean. I don't know. But I feel good about this matchup. I think the Saints put another win on the board. I think you kind of get something rolling. Now, Chicago in 2 weeks, that's another conversation. I think the Saints pull this one off. We'll see. I think the health stacking up is really positive for them, and we'll see how that goes. But all right, Jeff Nowak, injury report down. We're going to come back and do a segment I like to call Breeze and Stuff before we dive into our crossover interview with Christopher Price and our X Factors with Steve Geller. Again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Please leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already. We haven't had one in a while. It's bumming me out. So if you are a person with an iPhone that has the Apple Podcast app installed, do me a favor. Open it up. Look for Inside Black and Gold. I hope you subscribed already. If not, hit that subscribe button. I don't know. Scroll something down or just hit a review. Either way, appreciate all the listeners. Appreciate everyone who reaches out. I've been talking to a lot of folks at games. I always love hearing when people say, hey, I listen to the podcast. It's such a cool feeling because this is a very isolated job. I kind of just sit here in this room and talk to a computer screen. So it's always nice when I can get that in-person confirmation from people that are listening and enjoying the show. And and we're going to keep it going, obviously. We're about a third of the way through the season, and I think things are going to start to get better. I have a good feeling about it. We'll see. We'll be positive. It's going to be a positive podcast from here on out. You heard it here first. Anyway, who dat? Go Saints. We'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak coming at you solo for one more segment. Then we're going to bring in Steve Geller and Christopher Price to preview the Patriots side of the equation, then dive into some X Factors to close out the show. But here we're going to have our Breeze and Stuff segment, which is just something that we've started doing over the last few weeks. I feel like it's a good way to kind of lead into the matchup. So until someone tells me they hate it, I'm going to keep doing it. And it's just going to be me kind of throwing at you a few of the sound bites from the week that I appreciated, reacting to them, and moving on. In the first one, we've talked a lot about sack evasion and how Spencer Rattler has been handling it. And I thought Doug Nussmeier, Saints offensive coordinator, addressed it pretty well when he was asked a few questions about that topic. So here you go.
Number one is athleticism showing up. So like I've said, the 4.95 or whatever it is on paper is not what he plays to. And he's made some big plays, some explosive plays for us with his feet, and that's been a big part of it. He's done a good job with his hot, and sight awareness when protection breaks down and where we need to get the ball out when we get forced into hots. And I think he's done a good job of feeling the rush and getting rid of the ball.
Sack evasion in general, like when you have someone's coming straight at you and you got to make them miss, is that something that you coach? Is there footwork that you teach in that situation, or is a lot of it just okay?
No, we drill. We spend a lot of time and give Scotty Tolzien a lot of credit. Scotty does a great job with the guys, working the drills, and you see him every day, doing the different pocket movement and those type of things. Obviously, it's as we stay, at the position, you want guys that are instinctual players that feel it, because the guys that feel it can play faster. You can drill it, but it only helps to a certain extent, and then the player's instincts have to take over when you get in the heat of the battle.
Yeah, and I think that part at the end is kind of telling. It's like you can teach a guy all the stuff you want. You can drill the footwork. You can put him in a situation where he's got to juke a guy and make him miss. At the end of the day, he's going to go out in that field, and he's got to be able to react in those moments, and he's got to be able to understand the space, the time, the routes. And I just think as Spencer Rattler has gotten more confident in running the offense, that ability to create off schedule and avoid potential bad plays has really started to shine for him. And it's as big a reason as any that I feel pretty good about where the Saints offense is right now, despite the 1-4 start. And we'll see this week. The wheels could come off this week and suddenly we're right back where we started. But I don't know about you. Like, I can't help but watch this team and watch how things have developed over the first 4 weeks and feel pretty optimistic about where this can go and how this can continue to build. Again, we could be sitting here in a couple days and talking about, man, that really went poorly. That everything we thought we saw, we didn't see. But that's just football. We'll find out. Let's go over to the other side. One thing that I was very impressed with in terms of the defense was not just, okay, you took the ball away 5 times. It's that Justin Reed went out after the first drive of the game, and suddenly you're asking a bunch of young players to communicate, right? Not just to run the defense, but to spearhead the defense, to be in charge of the back end of the defense. And that's a lot. Like, you went into this season saying, we want Julian Blackmon and Justin Reed. We want 2 veterans back there because we feel comfortable about the veterans in terms of communicating everything from the top down. This is a defense that kind of builds from the back forward. And so those are important communication positions. And so I asked Brandon Staley, hey, what changed? How did you operate once Justin Reed went out of the game? And I thought he gave a really nice answer here.
I think you got to do it collectively. But what we were trying to do is make sure that we onboarded Burgess and Jordan to help Jonas, where we're not entrusting Jonas to be the commander-in-chief when he's brand new. So I think, those guys with experience really helped. And then, some of the adjustments and some of the, game plan specific stuff that we had for Justin, Terrell, took a lot of that over. And then between Jordan and then DeMario and Pete, that central command is kind of working inside out. And I think the other guy that was really underrated was Alontae Taylor. I thought Alontae did a great job within his role at Star of helping the communication in the secondary.
A lot of praise for Terrell Burgess and Alontae Taylor there. Obviously, Alontae, a lot's going to fall on him because he's already kind of that bridge from the front 7 to the back end. So he's going to do a lot of that communication anyway. So it makes sense that a lot would fall on him. I did think it was interesting that Terrell Burgess took on a pretty big role there, but it makes sense. Like, suddenly he's the veteran, right? Suddenly he's the guy who's been around the block a few times, and you're communicating with a rookie corner in Quincy Riley, a second-year corner in Kool-Aid McKinstry, a third-year safety in Jordan Howden, and another rookie safety in Jonas Sanker. And so a lot of that communication ends up coming from that dime back or that nickel back. But no, I mean, I just think that's as big of a positive as anything that you can come out of that game with in terms of the defense, because I don't know. When I saw Justin Reed go back to the locker room, I was just like, uh-oh. You're down 7-0. You're down 7-0. The Giants just marched down the field. You're 0-4. Like, that just felt like a sign of impending doom. And for those guys to handle it, and again, like, they say it all the time, it's a cliche. The NFL is really just a race to improve. It's just 32 teams trying to improve faster than everyone else. And I think if you go back and you look at how this team was operating in week 1, week 2, week 3 notwithstanding, everything kind of went off the rails there. But then week 4, week 5, like, you're seeing a team just gradually progressing on offense and defense in really positive ways. And you're giving more snaps to young players on defense. You're watching a young quarterback develop. I think there's a lot of positivity to be had from this team. Oh, and when you know it, there's a Taysom Hill now. You've got a Taysom Hill involved. And, it's been entertaining hearing Kellen Moore talk about it, Doug Nussmeier talk about it, because I just think it makes you so much more difficult to defend, right? Like, you just have triggers in your offense now that did not exist because they couldn't exist before. And now suddenly you get into 3rd and short, you get down into the red zone, and you've got this nice hammer that you can go over and grab and just bash people over the heads with. Oh, but that hammer is also can throw the ball and catch people off guard. I mean, like, I wouldn't want to be a defensive coordinator dealing with that. And that's one of the things Drew Brees talked about on WWL radio this week. So let's listen to it.
One guy that might help us run it in, and everyone loves Taysom Hill. Here you are. You're a future Pro Football Hall of Famer. I don't think you mind when Taysom Hill came in because he'd help you win. And to be ultimately, that's the team goal, to win the game. But what's the best way you would use, like, his multi-dimensional talent like Taysom, like him? And I mean, why do you think he's such an easy guy to root for? Drew, if you had one of your daughters brought home Taysom Hill in the future, I think you'd think, look, I've raised my family the right way, but you probably think you hit the lottery. I don't know, am I bamboozled by Taysom, or is he too good to be true?
No, man. He is exactly who you think he is. I mean, there's a reason everybody loves him. All his teammates, of course, the fan base. I mean, I think you know how I feel about Taysom. One of the best teammates you could ever ask for, one of the most selfless players you could ever ask for. You know, what he's meant to our organization and all the different roles that he's played, and just what a big part of he's been of the team. So I know that was an emotional time for him to, coming off of that injury, to come back and to be able to have the contributions that he had in the game. And I still, to this day, don't know why he wouldn't get from 7 to 12 snaps a game at the quarterback position. I mean, as a defensive coordinator, is that just not a nightmare for you?
Right.
Because, half the time he's going to carry the ball in some sort of, misdirection one way and he's going the other, or some sort of quarterback power where now we just have an extra blocker. And then at the end of that rainbow, you're going to have to tackle this 240-pound dude who wants to run over you. So like that in and of itself is highly effective. But now throw in the opportunity for him to push the ball down the field, which he's so good at. He completed a seam route in this game, but we've seen him over the years, launching a post, launching a deep over route, whatever it might be, where they're chunk play opportunities when he's in the game at quarterback. So for a defensive coordinator, it's an absolute nightmare. And like I would say for a guy like Spencer Rattler, a weapon like Taysom Hill could be his best friend.
Yeah.
Where this guy comes in, he throws the defense off balance, whether he's coming in to fulfill another position, like an H-back or a tight end or a slot or a running back. And then next thing you know, he's taking a snap. It just adds another dimension to this offense that I think would be highly, highly effective, as it has been in the past when, he was doing it for me.
Couldn't agree more with Drew there. And Drew would know. It's interesting because I'm still kind of fascinated to see how this offense really incorporates Taysom Hill. We're seeing like the tip of the iceberg right now in terms of what they did last week. I thought Taysom looked a little rusty. I don't know if he hit the gaps. Like if you went back and watched the tape, it seemed like he was a gap. He was a gap heavy, right? Like it seemed like he stretched out everything one gap too far. And there's like, you just need to put your foot in the ground and hit it. And we'll see if that changes. Maybe he was trying to push the edge a little bit more in this game and he wasn't getting there. And as he goes, I expect he'll get a little more comfortable with that knee and maybe some of that pace will come back. But just the ability to be that kind of battering ram at the in short yardage situations down in the red zone, that's a weapon that you just didn't have. And just go back and that 2-point conversion attempt against the Bills. Wouldn't that have looked a lot different if Taysom Hill was involved? Like, I'm pretty sure he scores on that play. You probably play it differently if Taysom Hill's in there. But I think that's a play you designed to be run by Taysom Hill. And you tried to run it with Spencer Rattler. It didn't work. That's not to say Spencer has not been effective in short yardage situations. He had a nice sneak in that game. Like, you can still use Spencer in those short yardage situations, but it becomes a lot more difficult to defend because you didn't put Taysom Hill on the field, so they're going to do something wonky, and then you just sneak it anyway. It creates havoc for the defense. That's what you want. One more take from Drew Brees, and it is him breaking down his expectations, what he has seen from Drake May to this point. So let's hear it.
I think just from a distance, like I watched the game on TV, I watched some highlights, and then I watched the post game interview with Drake May, and I think the first thing that comes across is like the guy's got a maturity about him that's pretty unique for a young guy. He comes from a family of athletes. I know he a brother who played basketball at North Carolina, and he's got another brother who played collegiate as well. And so, like, he's got come from a family of athletes or a dad who was a coach or something like that. Like, there's just it feels like you've just been growing up around it your whole life, and it's almost like you always envisioned yourself being there. And so there's just kind of a calm and a poise to you, which it seems like he has. I love Vrabel. He was a hell of a football player. I think everybody has a ton of respect for him. He's a hard-nosed, kind of comes from a hard-nosed football lineage, and so certainly he's trying to instill that, in this day and age there in New England again.
Yep.
But just like you can see, you feel like they've got this culture and this identity that they're really trying to recreate there. And obviously you got to do it with the quarterback first and foremost. And it seems like Drake's like his kind of guy when it comes to building that. But man, he's got them believing. And obviously they go and they knock off arguably the favorite in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills, at their place, early in the season. That's got to have them feeling, pretty good about where they are. But I know this, I figured the Giants might come in a little overconfident. I think our challenge this week is that, man, the Patriots aren't coming in overconfident. Vrabel seems like one of those guys who's going to keep them humble, keep them hungry, and they're going to keep trying to build. Man, we're going to have to bring our absolute best, and it's going to be, to me, this is like one of those physical, really, really physical type of games where we got to win the fight before we win the game, like the old bat games that Sean Payton used to have. To me, this is that type of game for the New Orleans Saints.
An old school bat game. Who would be the guy carrying the bat out this week? That's a good question. Would the NFL allow you to carry a bat, or would they fine you for menacing gestures? That is a good question. I do wonder. I feel like the nature of the NFL is different now in terms of whether you can get away with bringing a bat out onto the field. But I agree. I do think it's going to be one of those kind of grinded out slugfest type games, and both teams are going to need to show up and hit, and we'll see who comes out ahead. I think one or two big plays could be the difference in this game. And the Patriots, as hard-nosed as they are up front, they do leave themselves open on the back end. They give up a lot of explosive plays, and I'd like to see Spencer continue to be aggressive on those explosive plays the same way he was in Week 5 against the Giants and against another team that really doesn't try to disguise a ton of what they're doing. They kind of just play straight up. They do what they do well. And I'd imagine if you ask them why they don't disguise a lot, it's because, hey, we want to get our guys in position. We trust them to run the defense the way it is. We don't need them to be caught out of position because they're trying to roll late into something else. They just run their stuff, and that allows a young quarterback. And there are positives to that. But on the other end, it allows a young quarterback to trust what he's seeing a little bit more and execute what he's doing. And we'll see if Spencer can take advantage of that this week, like he did last week with not only the long touchdown to Rashid Shaheed, but also 2 long pass interference. And I did ask Nuss today, it's do you include those? When you kind of track your own explosive plays, do you track long pass interference penalties as explosive? Yes, they absolutely do. So when you kind of look at that, it's okay, you hit one explosive play, but then you also generated 2 more explosive plays with aggressive throws downfield. And if you're going to hit 3 explosives a game, you're winning. You'd love to take 1 shot every quarter. I think that's kind of the old school way of thinking, is just 1 per quarter. So if you're hitting 3, you're getting the job done, especially when one of those is an 80-plus yard touchdown. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Breeze and Stuff. Again, I am Jeff Nowak. This is Inside Black and Gold. We are getting ready for Week 6. Saints 1-4 hosting the Patriots 3-2. The Saints trying to knock down those pesky Pats from their pedestal after a prime-time pounding of the Buffalo Pills. I ran out of peas, man. I ran out of peas. But you get the idea. Again, Inside Black and Gold. Make sure to subscribe. Hit that like button. Otherwise, stick around. We'll be right back with Christopher Price, Steve Geller, and our full-blown crossover preview for the Saints matchup with the Patriots. We'll be right back. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold, a preview edition. Saints 1-4, getting ready to host the Patriots, the fresh off an upset of the Bills. Patriots 3-2 inside the Caesars Superdome. I'm Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller as always, and we're bringing in special guest Christopher Price, Patriots beat writer, longtime Patriots beat writer, Boston Globe. Also hosts the Believe in Patriots podcast with Saints legend Chris Hogan. Y'all might remember Chris Hogan for his brief stint here in New Orleans on the Believe podcast network. Chris, I often like to point to the Patriots and Saints as being in very similar situations in the sense that you move on from a legendary Super Bowl winning head coach, you move on from a legendary Super Bowl winning quarterback in different ways, obviously, considering Tom went down to Tampa. You hired a head coach, fired a head coach. Now you have a new era. Things are positive again, young quarterback. How are things going in Patriots land these days?
There is some cautious optimism based on what happened last Sunday against the Bills in primetime in Buffalo. I think for a lot of Patriots fans, that was a measuring stick game in a lot of ways because the first 4 games they were up and down. They beat some bad, they beat a bad Carolina team, and then they kind of struggled against the Steelers and the Raiders, and they really in a lot of ways ended up beating themselves. They really pointed to the Buffalo game as a way to say, look, this is a way we can truly measure ourselves against a team with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, and they played very well. They almost gave the game away, but in the end, they adhered to Mike Vrabel's first and most important football commandment. That is to say, they took advantage of bad football. They were good enough to take advantage of bad football, and they ended up beating the Bills. And so a lot of people, really, like I said around here, are cautiously optimistic. They're not talking Super Bowl, but they are allowing themselves to think about the idea of a 500 season, a plus 500 season, and possibly, if everything breaks right for them, a playoff spot. But we'll see.
Yeah, we just saw that Bills squad, and they definitely look beatable. Maybe not for this Saints team yet, but the defense was surely lacking in Buffalo. A huge concern for them. But the biggest concern I feel like that at least I've seen with the Patriots offense is the turnover so far, right?
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. That in a lot of ways, that's their Achilles heel. If they didn't turn the ball over 5 times against the Steelers, they would have beaten them by double digits. Honestly. And a lot of that, as we sit here right now, is traceable back to the running game, specifically Ramondre Stevenson, who's fumbled 3 times through the first 5 games of the season. And now he was always the feature back, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots proceed moving forward, because Antonio Gibson is lost for the year with a knee injury. They have Trevion Henderson, a rookie 2nd-round pick out of Ohio State, who performed very well over the course of the preseason, over the course of the summer, ran a kickback against Washington, the first preseason game, looked for all the world like a guy who was going to be contending for the offensive rookie of the year, but he hasn't really become untracked yet. He's had some bad holding penalties, and I think the speed of the game might be getting to him a little bit, but really right now it's going to have to be Ramondre Stevenson by default, even with all of his ball security issues. I believe they're going to bring a guy up from the practice squad, just add another layer of depth there. But the running game has yet to really find its form over the course of the first 5 games. And a lot of those problems are traceable back to those turnovers.
Yeah. And, obviously the quarterback is going to get, credit and blame everywhere you go. And they can't really do much about the running back fumbling, but what have you seen from Drake May in year 2? As I watch him, he just seems like a very mature player. We had Drew Brees on WWL yesterday, and it was like, that's what you get when you listen to his press conferences, when you watch him out there. You don't get the sense that this is a rookie player, like scrambling around with his head cut off, or a 2nd-year player. Like it does seem like from afar that he's playing with a very high level of poise for a young player. Like what's your take on that?
Yeah, there's a few reasons why he's a better quarterback this year than he was last year, quite frankly. First of all, I think he's got better pieces around him. First you can point to Steph Diggs, who's now led the team in total yardage in back-to-back games. He was a question mark in the summer. What kind of Diggs are they getting coming off an ACL? But clearly, part of it was the adrenaline going into the Buffalo game that I think fueled him a little bit. But they clearly have a number 1 wide receiver now in Diggs. The other thing is they have a better offensive line. I know it's a modest goal, but the offensive line coming into the season was just all about creating consistency, continuity. They ran so many guys out there because of ineffective play and health issues and coaching. So he's getting better protection. And then the third thing is he's really developed a nice rapport with offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels when it comes to leaning into his strengths and kind of backing away from the weaknesses. Really, the thing that continues to grow for me, the thing that continues to impress me is his pocket presence. Tom Brady, and I'm not going to compare the two here, but Tom Brady was his own best offensive lineman a lot of the time. You guys can speak to that, really. He was able to sense pressure in the pocket, move one way or another, and kind of figure things out, and then, hit the open receiver. May is not there yet, but that's where I've seen the most dramatic improvement from year 1 to year 2 in terms of his ability to move in the pocket. Last year, when protection would break down, he would take off like a scalded dog. He would run into injury, or he would just make a bad decision and, come away with an interception. Right now, he's staying in the pocket. He's doing the right thing. And if he needs to take off, he's being smart about it. He's sliding. He's getting out of bounds. So there's a lot of things that are going into his overall development. And I think it all kind of coalesced very nicely against Buffalo. You saw the results. And he had 1 incomplete pass in the second half. Those passes he threw to Diggs were special. And quite honestly, a lot of that was, we were talking about this in the press box after the game, a lot of it was Josh Allen style football. and right in front of Josh Allen. So he's not there yet. And again, I'm not putting him in the Brady conversation, but we're seeing dramatic improvement from him from year 1 to year 2.
I don't know if I've ever heard the term takes off like a scalded dog, but it's a great visual. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. You see a dog and they're like, yip, 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 and just runs away. But no, you mentioned Stefan Diggs, and I want to I don't want to say dig in more to that, but that's what I would normally say. You talk about like revenge games. Like, you hear that term thrown around a lot, revenge game. I mean, like, not everyone leans into that the same way. I don't know what's your take, because it seemed like the Stefan Diggs you saw out in Buffalo was like a special kind of Stefan Diggs, like just from an energy perspective, just from like when you have a veteran player who's coming out with that level of energy, everyone feeds on that. Would you agree? And is that something is there a little concern that it's hard to carry that over for a guy like him?
Yeah, very definitely. And it's not just Diggs in this case. I think a lot of guys in the locker room, and I don't know how much of it was from the veteran guys there and how much of it has kind of trickled down from Vrabel, but they are approaching this game against New Orleans very, very cautiously. We haven't heard the phrase trap game around New England in the last couple of years, but there is a real concern that coming off that win, coming off a big emotional win Sunday night, everything that went into it, not just Diggs, but across the board, the Patriots had struggled to beat Buffalo in Buffalo for like the last 5 or 6 years, just blown out consistently, just all sorts of issues, in all 3 phases of the game. There is a concern that the Patriots will kind of, I don't want to say start to coast a little bit, but the feeling is that they're looking at this game as a possible, a landmine, the kind of game where they can get tripped up. They need to focus on stacking success. The expectation level for this team, based on what happened in Buffalo, is dramatically different than it was at the start of the year. And the Patriots want to be able to maintain that consistency. They want to be able to maintain that continuity. They want to try and win 3 straight for the first time in 2 years, which is really remarkable considering, the track record, the dynasty days of New England where they would routinely go on double-digit winning streaks. 3-game win streak here. That's the key moving forward for this team. That's the focus.
Looking at the offensive line with the Patriots, just wondering how our guy Will Campbell's doing from LSU. I know he's a ton of fun to cover, and just got to imagine he's giving you some great insights on his game. Just looking at I think a lot of people have talked about how amusing it was that his arm length was talked about coming out, and I don't think that's been an issue at all for the Patriots.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, I compare him a little bit to, and I know he's Louisiana's own, but I compare him a little bit to Logan Mankins, who played for the Patriots for about a decade.
Okay.
Really strong, country strong, tough, just doesn't take any crap from anybody. Plays, the phrase that I remember about Mankins was he played to the echo of the whistle. And I think Will kind of follows in those same sort of footsteps. So, the arm length hasn't been a problem. It hasn't been perfect, but I think when you look at what he's done over the first 5 games, paired on the left side, 4 of them with another rookie in Jared Wilson, out of the kid out of Georgia. I think he was he's a 3rd-round pick out of Georgia, who's really performed well. If memory serves, I think only one team has done that on a quarterback's blind side over the last decade or so, and that was the Ravens a few years back. And so to be able to come into the league, play at that level, play at that high level for such an extended period of time, it's all positive at this point. He's played every single offense. I don't think he's played every single offensive snap, but I think he's over 90% play time. And right now, I would have to call him the Patriots' most impactful rookie right out of the gate, out of the first 4 games, because the first 5 games, because they do have a very good rookie class. But I think Campbell has been the best of that group so far.
One of the things that stands out to me when you kind of look at the stats and the advanced stats around this Patriots running game is rushing yards after contact, which they're 31st in the NFL with about 2.1 yards per play after contact, and 2.3 rather. The only team with fewer is the Bears. And they're also a team that's faced a lot of stacked boxes to this point in the season. And I have to ask, so having not watched, I did watch the entirety of that game on Sunday, but I haven't watched the Patriots all season. Has the game plan for opposing defenses been, okay, we need to force Drake May to beat us? Because that just seems odd that you would see a team that's not really rushing the ball that effectively face that many stacked boxes to this point.
Yeah. And I think that has been the case early on. The Patriots really kind of fancy themselves as a game plan week to week team. may drop back 46 times or had 46 pass attempts in the opener against the Raiders. That number has been probably cut in half if you average it out over the last 4 games or so. So it's changed relatively dramatically. I think right now the plan is to kind of stack the box and say, all right, Drake, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us over the top. And I'm wondering now, and it's a great question. I'm wondering now, even as we talk about it, if that's going to change with the continued emergence of Steph Diggs, that teams are going to kind of, are going to be forced to change their overall approach to defending the Patriots because, Diggs has emerged. I think Hunter Henry is just as solid as they come when you're talking about the tight end position. You have some guys at the middle of that wide receiver depth chart who aren't necessarily, maybe in baseball parlance, number 1 starters, but good innings guys. Kayshon Boutte, another LSU guy, has had great moments this year. Pop Douglas is probably not where they want him to be, but he's continuing to emerge. You're getting good performances out of guys like Mac Hollins. And so I thought it was interesting over the course of the first 4 games, May found 4 different guys. 4 different guys have led the Patriots in receiving yards. And I'm wondering, again, like we talked about Diggs, I'm wondering if Diggs is going to be that consistent guy moving forward. But there have been a lot of options. And I think the Patriots and May specifically, have managed to take advantage of some of those opportunities when it comes to teams looking to put 8 and 9 guys in the box and loading up to stop guys like Ramondre Stevenson.
When you look at the defensive side of the football with the Patriots, it looks at least their biggest weakness so far this season has been stopping the pass. Not the being stout against the run hasn't been a problem, but what's been the issue with the secondary?
They've had a lot of moving parts, and they've had a lot of new guys kind of come in, and it's just they haven't had consistency back there. Maybe that's the best way to put it. They traded Jabril Peppers right before the start of the season, who I thought was probably their stoutest safety. Kyle Duggar's playing time has been up and down. They've been going with rookie Craig Woodson. Craig Woodson has played more defensive snaps than anyone on this team. And I think sometimes that's kind of shown through, but he's been paired with Jalen Hawkins the majority of time at safety. And then they just got, right before the Carolina game, they just got Christian Gonzalez back. And so that's allowed people to kind of slot back into more regular roles. You don't necessarily need Carlton Davis to be your number one cornerback. He's moved into the number 2 role where he's a lot more comfortable than where he was, initially when Gonzalez was out. So really there's been a lot of just moving parts back there. And I think the other thing too, they faced 2 really fast offenses in Las Vegas right out of the gate, and then Miami in week 3. Not saying that's an excuse, but I think that kind of feeds into it as well. 2 teams that are good when it comes to explosive plays, but that's something that they definitely need to clean up moving forward. They still lead the league in most plays of 20 plus yards allowed. And so that's something that has been a huge focus for them moving forward. Admittedly, look, a lot of those numbers were the first 3 weeks of the season, and they've kind of dialed back, but they want to keep that arrow pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, Chris, my last question is kind of like broader, but, you hear a lot of times like, the team plays with the personality of its head coach. And, Mike Vrabel has a very specific kind of personality. And, and I don't know how different that is from Gerard Mayo last year. It was really kind of a strange situation. You hire a guy, you fire a guy in 1 year. It doesn't happen very often in the NFL. But have you seen that this year? Has this team kind of adopted the Vrabel teachings to this stage? Like what? And how has that helped them, if that's the case?
Yeah, look, Vrabel carries himself with some swagger. It was funny. He's expressive. He's got some attitude in the way that he kind of, goes about his business on a day-to-day basis. And he's consistent with that too. I think that's one of the biggest differences between him and Gerard Mayo. One of the things that guys have talked about was that Mayo last year kind of changed over the course of the year. And that inconsistency, I think, rubbed some of them the wrong way. Vrabel's been the same guy ever since he was named head coach in January. And so he's been very upfront. He's been very direct with guys. That hasn't always played well, but I think the important guys in the locker room have gotten the message. They have very strong leadership, and I think they are completely attuned to what Mike Vrabel wants. They also were able to bring over some guys who played for him in Tennessee, some guys who played for Josh McDaniels before with the Raiders, and they've been able to kind of carry over that approach, that smart, tough, physical approach that I think distinguished a lot of those Vrabel teams, or at least the best Vrabel teams in Tennessee. And they've managed to kind of instill that here in New England. Look, Milton Williams aside, you're going to go wherever the money goes. Milton Williams got $100 million. Of course, he's going to go to New England. But the other free agents really, when you look, when you talk to them to a man, have all said, look, I wanted to come here and play for Vrabel. I wanted to be a part of this. I wanted to be a part of something that this guy is building, that this franchise is building. I want to kind of ride with him. And again, a lot of those guys were Vrabel guys from years back. But at the same time, he's been able to raise the bar. He's been able to instill something close to a championship culture in this locker room. He's gotten a lot of the right guys in there. I think it's going to take another couple of years. If they need to go out next year, they still have some money that's going to roll over in free agency and continue to move things forward with some veteran faces. But he's certainly got the thing turned around. He's done, the difference between this year and last year is just like night and day.
But yeah, I appreciate that because, I say this a lot. You can be a character as a head coach. You can't play a character as a head coach because guys see through that really quickly. And I think Mike Vrabel is a good example of he's a character, but it's like as long as you're consistent and you're honest and people get that kind of vibe from you, you can make it work. Right?
Yeah,
there's a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and I think too that there's some of the aspects, and you guys know this. There's some of the aspects of that job that are purely performative for the fans, for the media, and for a lot of the guys in the locker room. But at the same time, there have been instances this year, like there was a training camp scrap. I won't even call it a fight, but there was a training camp dust up that I'm sure you guys read about with Washington, where Vrabel wandered into the fray and he got his cheek bloodied and stuff. Guys love that. Guys totally look. My coach has my back. I love it. There was the scene when Gibson ran the kick back against Miami when Vrabel was running alongside him on the sidelines, and it was a great image and stuff. Again, from the outside, people are like, "Oh, well, it's a great image," but that really resonated in the locker room. So things like that, being a former player, being able, being attuned to a player's needs, being attuned to what the team wants, being attuned to what the locker room needs. He's completely dialed in on all of that. And I think that's made a real difference. I don't know how much of it this year is going to manifest itself when it comes to wins, but the culture is, again, miles ahead of where it was at this point last year.
All right. Great stuff. Christopher Price. You can follow him on Twitter at CPriceGlobe, longtime Patriots beat writer for the Boston Globe. Also hosts the Believe in Patriots podcast alongside Chris Hogan. I appreciate the time so much, Chris. Thanks for great insight.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
See you in the Dome Sunday, man.
Definitely.
Thanks again to Christopher Price. Go check out his work. Great insight there. I think the Saints should and can shut down the Patriots run game based on what we've seen so far. Ramondre Stevenson doesn't concern me. I am a little bit worried about Travion Henderson hitting kind of a home run.
Yeah.
And the Saints tackling was better against the Giants, but it's still Cam Scatterbo broke a bunch of tackles and, they were able to punch the ball out. And the strategy against Scatterbo is sometimes and Deuce will tell you this, when you have a running back who wants to kind of run through tackles, if you're a defense, that's your prime opportunity. Yeah. Hold him up, punch at the ball, punch at the ball, punch at the ball. And, it's not a coincidence that they were able to punch the ball out against Cam Scatterbo, because that's one of the dangers of a guy who's trying to get that extra 2-3 yards. You kind of just exposing yourself for fists to come in and knock the ball out. They got it. They got an 87-yard touchdown. That's not really what you're going to get with Travion Henderson, right? He's going to hit the hole, and if it's there, he's gone. If it's not, and if he can run through one arm tackle, he might be able to do that, but he's not a guy who's going to be stiff arming you and taking you down. But you got to take good angles and you got to get him down. So that's the thing I'm worried about in the Patriots run game is their home run ability. But I don't know. I think this sets up pretty well for the Saints. I do. And, I think there is a danger for this Patriots team to come in a little overconfident, and we'll have to see.
I'm definitely a lot more concerned now than I was at the beginning of the year facing off against someone like Steph Diggs. You get those bad memories of the Minnesota miss. I won't call it the miracle. That's a
Sure.
BS. I hate that term, the Minnesota Miracle. But anyway, that still lingers. And the fact that he's had back-to-back 100-yard games, so him and Drake May have a little bit of something going. I don't like seeing that.
Yeah, and the thing with Diggs, and I think tackling, this isn't the X Factor segment, but this is the you got to be able to tackle, right? They tackled well against the Giants. The Giants don't have any scary receivers. The Giants didn't have anyone that was going to run through a tackle. Right? You're able to tackle Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton. Every time I see him, I'm like, he should be good. Why isn't he good? Jalen Hyatt was bad. So the tackling became a lot easier when you kind of figured out their plan. And it's like, okay, they're going to try to get Theo Johnson out into space and give him room to run. And they tackled him pretty well. But Steph Diggs, if you watch that Bills game, like the biggest impact he made was on comeback routes where he would catch the ball, and he's so good. And this is what happened on the Minnesota play. Like you're talking about, like, what did he do? He came back to the ball, caught it, and then spun out. And I think people underestimate just how strong he is in his lower body because he doesn't look like that. But when he's able to kind of catch the ball, kind of pivot and go downfield, you just see guys kind of taking an angle, coming in with an arm and just falling off. And then suddenly he's got 10, 15 yards and a straight sprint down the field because that first guy who thought they had him sized up just, comes in with his shoulder instead of wrapping up, and he's able to run through it. And you just can't give him those free yards. Like, that's how he got over 100 yards against the Patriots. It wasn't big plays. It was kind of comeback routes. You're playing over the top, and he's able to steal 10, 15 yards on you. You do that 2, 3, 4 times, suddenly you're at 60, 70 yards, and it extends drives that you should be in 3rd and 7. Instead, it's a first down. And like, those are the plays the Saints need to make sure they don't allow. So it's going to be on Kool-Aid. It's going to be on Quincy, who I think they've tackled pretty well the last 2 weeks. Got to keep that going. And that's what it is. Cause I don't know, like Steph Diggs, he's a good player. He's past his prime. He is not a guy that
he didn't look good in Houston last year at all. And I mean, that's part of this, CJ Stroud, that whole entire offense struggled.
Yeah. So we'll see. But, and I think that when you talk about guys coming off like that high energy, high emotion game, like he's Buffalo, the prime candidate for I don't know if it's possible for a guy to not have a drop off in energy when you go into that game and you watch him on the sideline and he's like, and sure, like, maybe Vrabel can keep that going. Maybe the offense can sustain that, but it's tough. I mean, that's why you have bulletin board material in the first place. You get like everyone says like, you're going to give 110%, right? That's the cliche. Yeah. Well, it's really difficult to get that out of people when they don't have that like extra kind of crazy mental motivation to do it. You're in most cases, you're going to get 99%. That extra 1%, that comes from the motivation that you get from whatever it is that's motivating you. And I just don't think the Saints are going to see that same guy. I don't. But
hope you're right for sure.
Yeah. But all right, let's hit a break, come back, do some X factors. We got another Drew Brees clip we're going to want to hit, and thought he had some really interesting insight on the running back. So we'll talk about that. But again, I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. This is Inside Black and Gold, getting you ready for Saints hosting the Patriots. A win streak? A win? Is 2 wins a win streak?
We're streaking.
Do you call that a streak?
Absolutely.
Or is it just 2 wins? I feel like you got to get to 3 before you call it a streak.
You got to get 2 before you get 3. Ha ha.
That is factually correct. I did the math, and you're right.
It's just one of the tired old sayings with anything. It's like you got to get 1 before you get the next.
Got to get 7 before you can get 8.
6, 7.
You got to get 965 before you can get 9. Anyway, we are gonna continue again. Who dat? Go Saints! Make sure to subscribe. We will be right back. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller. We're getting you ready for Saints 1-4 hosting the Patriots 3-2. A Patriots team that has exceeded expectations to whatever level of the expectations were for them going into the season. I can't tell you exactly what they are, but I can assure you they did not include going into Buffalo on Sunday Night Football and being the heavily favored Bills. But that's what happened, and that's the team the Saints are going to have to try to slow down this week. And, they have lost 2 games. One of those games was to the Raiders, arguably the worst team in football. So there is some susceptibility there as well. Anytime you upset the team like the Bills, they're going to get nothing but positive things said about you. The same way the Saints are getting nothing but positive things said about them this week, even though there's a lot of negativity to try to figure out with the Saints. You're going to kind of go through that. But let's just dive into it. X factors. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Steve, as you look at this matchup, as you look at what the Saints have done over the first 5 weeks, how the offense has developed, what is your biggest kind of offensive X factor, be it a player, be it a concept? Like, where is it?
It's definitely, we look at the strength of the Patriots defense is that their run defense. Well, I still want to see that Alvin Kamara and Kendra Miller can set the tone. And I know there's a little concern because AK popped up with an ankle issue we think that it's not anything serious, just giving him, some kind of rest this week leading up to the game. But with Miller and AK going at it, you're setting that tone, establishing the ground game, and just controlling the clock more. I think that's kind of like the identity we're seeing with this Saints team is should be more centered around that rushing attack. Although it was phenomenal to see a big explosive play over the top to Shaheed, but I think your bread and butter is still going to be ground and pound here.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of emerged over the last 2 weeks in particular is like a legit tandem. Like Kendra Miller actually had more rushing attempts than Alvin in the win over the Giants, and it was very close. I think it was like 15-11 or something like that against the Bills. We had Drew Brees on WWL radio this week, and he kind of talked about like, okay, what does make an effective tandem like that? This is what he had to say.
When you look, everybody wants to be the man. I'm just saying, like, okay, the running back. I see a number of teams, whether college or the pros, running back by committee. And it looks like the Saints are trying to get back to a legit running back tandem. We all know about Alvin Kamara and Kendra Miller, how he's played the past couple of games. What are the keys to making that type of backfield that you can keep them both happy and spread the wealth, so to speak?
Look, there was plenty of those combinations, right, over the last 20 years. Going back to Reggie and Deuce, right? That was like the first Thunder and Lightning,
right?
I mean, really, that was what there was literally tags that we would attach to plays that would denote who we wanted in the game, and it was Thunder and Lightning, and then that kind of evolved to it was Pierre Thomas and Reggie, and then it was Darren Sproles and Mark Ingram, and then it was Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and and now I think that this could be that same type of 1-2 punch where. Look, both these guys can run between the tackles. Obviously, Kamara does so much as a receiver and as a receiving threat outside of the backfield. But I think having that 1-2 punch is always beneficial for those guys, not just to give them a rest from time to time, but man, they really start to feed off each other. I saw that probably more mostly with Alvin and Mark Ingram. Just because I think they rooted for each other so much too. Like there was a bond, there was a brotherhood there. Very similar. Like if I was to point to another combination that's probably the best in the league, it's Montgomery and Gibbs up in Detroit.
The Lions,
right?
yeah.
Well, yeah, Sonic and Knuckles, right? Like I mean, they've got their own little persona, But I think when two backs take pride in that together and they really like feed off each other, I think you get the best out of everybody.
Now, Drew, wasn't the Thunder and Lightning original a G-Men thing?
Yeah, you had to bring that up. Yeah. So I think what he's saying there is the Saints first Thunder and Lightning.
I got you.
Was
to me, when I hear Thunder and Lightning, the Giants just pop to mind.
And I even looked this up because I heard that and I was like, wait,
okay,
is that somehow the first? And no, like Ron Dane and Tiki Barber was the first kind of colloquialized. Like, I don't know if it was said about other tandems in the past, but it's something about the New York media market. They just have a knack for creating terminology for popular things, which, you've heard a lot of things described as Thunder and Lightning since, but Tiki Barber, Ron Dane was probably the first true Thunder and Lightning tandem. Deuce and Reggie, obviously you could call that too. And I think it's interesting they would tag plays like that. That's a cool little detail. My favorite Giants tandem name, which was a trio, was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And that
wasn't too long ago, right?
It was Brandon Jacobs, Ahmad Bradshaw, and Derek Ward. So it was probably around like 2010.
Okay, so yeah, that is a long time ago. Damn.
And I don't know, like maybe it's a New York media market thing because they also normalized NASCAR as like the NASCAR package.
Yes.
The Giants
right.
Just seems like there's something to be said for being the biggest media market in the world and having a team that can help do that. But no, I did think that was interesting. And what I tweeted today, because like there was a fantasy football account that was like, oh man, this Kendra is really eating into Alvin's carries and blah blah blah, and it made it sound like Alvin was losing snaps because Kendra was playing better, and it's like there's true and false to that. Like you're giving Kendra more opportunities because he's playing well. That is true, but the idea that Alvin is like getting kind of bypassed, this was completely endorsed by Alvin. Alvin wants this. Like, this is not he's sitting over there grumpy because Kendra's out snapping him.
Not his MO at all, right?
Alvin is 30 years old. Alvin fully understands where he's at in his career. He doesn't want to be run into the ground. He wants to get premium opportunities. And so, yeah, if Kendray's handling the contact better and running through tackles better, which he is at an elite level, yeah, give him opportunities. I'll take the option routes up the field. Like give me in the screen game. Like Alvin is not in a situation where he's fully endorsing this.
And I think too, he got nicked up last game with the ankle, so it's like Kendray got more carries too. He outtouched him, I think, in large part because of dealing with the ankle.
But no, I mean, I think that when Drew says the key to these tandems working successfully is you got to play for each other. You got to really be invested in the other guy to succeed. And when Nuss compared it to Zeke and Tony Pollard, I thought that was a good example of that was a very legitimate timeshare with two very good running backs, and no one questioned whether they were good or not. It was okay, how are we going to split this up? And if one guy has the hot hand, you stick with him, right? You did mention that the Patriots have a elite run defense, and the numbers back that up. And so, we've gone against two teams in a row that were terrible after contact. The Bills and the Giants allowed some of the most rushing yards after contact in the NFL. Well, it is the opposite with the Patriots. You look at yards after contact allowed, and this is a stat that I think is important because it's a stat that tells you, are you tackling well or are you getting run through, right? And that can be the key to shutting down a run game or having a run game that really just kind of leans on you. If you're running for first downs, the defense is getting tired, drives are extending, the time of possession is getting tilted. And when you can tackle at the point of contact, that becomes a lot easier. So the Patriots are third in the NFL. They only allow 2.41 yards after first contact. That is the third lowest in the NFL. And what's impressive about that is that they have only run out a stacked box, which is 8 or more defenders inside the box, which is kind of within 6 to 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. They've only run a stacked box 17.2% of the time. So it's not like they're just loading up against the run and stopping it. They're playing with coverage and also tackling. And that makes life difficult for an offense. You're not getting free yards and you're not getting favorable matchups over the top because they're able to sit with their safeties and still stop the run. And, so you're going to have to get creative in how you do that. But I agree with you. The ability to run the ball with both guys in a variety of ways is going to be critical to this game.
And you mentioned going into the Giants game, I thought that was going to be the key for the Saints. It ended up being takeaways, but the run game overall really wasn't impressive against the New York.
No. And, my X factor kind of dovetails off of that, but it's indirect of okay, you want to be able to run the ball. You also have to score in the red zone. Yeah. And when you're going against a team like the Patriots that, probably is going to be a low scoring game. This probably is going to be a smash mouth rock fight type game because neither team should be able to run the ball particularly well. And you might get a few big plays over the top. But when you get down into the red zone, when you're able to get down into the red zone, you have to take advantage of it. And Kellen Moore's talked about it this week. He puts a lot of it on play calling. Yeah, some of it has to go on the quarterback. You had penalties in the red zone, which you just can't have those. The Saints didn't have a ton of penalties, but they did in the red zone. You had a negative play to Taysom Hill in the red zone that really kind of sets you up. And not all red zone drives are the same, right? It's a big difference when you're in third and goal from the 11, or you're in third and 10 from the 12. Those are much more low percentage scoring opportunities than second and goal from the 4. Right. And you didn't get those. Those are the, and I'd like to see the Saints prioritize, hey, when we get the ball in the high red zone, let's get into the low red zone. You don't need to score I want to get the ball to the goal line. I want to be able to run the ball in. That's when the Saints really turned around their red zone offense a couple of years ago with Derek Carr. Guys, there was a point in the Derek Carr era where it was you're one of the worst red zone offenses in the NFL. And then over the final, this was 2023, this year they finished 9-8. One of the reasons you were able to get on that run and win 4 of your final 5 games was that you went from being one of the worst red zone offenses in the NFL in terms of efficiency to one of the best red zone offenses in the NFL in terms of efficiency. And you did that by running the ball down toward the goal line and then creating advantages in that way. So a lot of it is on the play calling. The other thing that frustrated me when I went back and watched, see, you had 3 drives down into the red zone. You ran a number of plays. I don't know what the exact number was because there were some penalties and whatever, but there was only 2 throws into the end zone in those 3 drives. And they were both throwaways. Like there was one that was thrown over Alvin Kamara's head, not trying to get him the ball, like trying to kind of survive. It was the final drive of the first half, which you were, down. I think they ran that final play with 6 seconds. So you don't have time to extend. You just got to either throw it or get rid of it. And he did. And they had time. They kicked the field goal. They took the lead going into the break. Like that was a smart play. And then later in the game, it was a play that got flushed. Spencer had to scramble and he kind of threw it over Juwan Johnson. Again, it was not a ball that he was trying to get to Juwan. It was clearly a throwaway. So, I mean, you got into the red zone 3 times in that game, and you didn't even push the end zone. Like everything was short, and I don't know, like there's things to be said about like, hey, I want to get a first down here. I want to get closer. But also like they did not pressure the Giants defense at all. So I need to see execution. I also need to see more aggressive play calling down there.
And I feel like see more in those situations. Valet. There were times I thought in the red zone, you mentioned some overthrows in the not being able to connect, but there were times I felt like he wasn't even on the field.
Yeah, I don't know why Brandon Cooks is in your red zone packages.
Thank you. Right.
It doesn't make sense to me. And I know you want to get Brandon involved. And Brandon did have a couple nice catches in that game. Valet had a couple nice catches in that game to get first downs over the middle of the field. I want him down there. Like he's basically just a big tight end who can run wide receiver routes. Use him. And so like that's a part of it. And again, like Kellen put it on himself. Like I think he understands that like I need to be better down there, and I agree with him. Like there's a lot of things that I think Kellen has done well from an offensive play caller perspective. Red zone play sequencing and personnel decisions. I don't know if it's been his best work, but I do think that he can improve there, and that's where the biggest point of improvement this team can make. Because I think they're like 44%. To this point in the season in terms of scoring touchdowns in the red zone, and that's like 29th in the NFL. And I don't need him to be top 5 or top 10, but I do need him to be middle of the pack. I need that to be more like 60%.
I'm wondering, are we going to get Taysom Hill doing the tush push, coming up in this matchup? If you need that short yardage.
I do think that, Taysom Hill, you do want to get him more involved down in the red zone. That should help you be more efficient in the red zone, right? Like when you talk about running down in the red zone, when you can just have Taysom Hill go out there and get you a first down at the 5-yard line, that makes scoring in the red zone a heck of a lot easier. So we'll see. I think that's going to be a heavy part of his involvement. I don't know. Like we haven't seen him run the tush push yet. And for the same reason, we never saw him on sneaks before. I just don't think the best part of his game is going under center. Like, I don't think he's comfortable going under center. He never does it. So we'll see. But
you could pull a Kellen special and do a fake tush push and then have Taysom toss it.
Yeah. The Eagles ran a fake tush push.
I did see that.
Ago,
yeah.
Which I was like, why would you break that out in a game that is not in the playoffs? Like, why would you not save that until the last possible moment? Like, why would you even put that on someone's radar this early in the year? Maybe they just wanted to see if it would work, and now they're not going to do it again until a premium situation.
Right.
But it was just strange to me. It's like, you're going to show that now in week 3? Anyway, but let's switch to the defense. Let's go through this pretty quick because this has been a long episode already. Okay. Give me your defensive X factor for this game.
Do not let the young QB have his way with the secondary. Get the pressure to him. This is definitely a matchup where I'm totally all in on what Drake May's doing. The rushing attack for the Patriots shouldn't scare you at all, although you did mention the sloppy tackling or missed tackles. That is a concern for the Saints. It did get a little bit better against the Giants, but their rushing game wasn't impressive either.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that, so we'll see if Chase Young plays. He did get back to practice.
Yay, right.
I would be surprised if he is a full go, right? I think you just want to make sure you have him the rest of the way and whatever that looks like. So I don't know if you want to push him too hard this week. I do want to see him out there, even if it's for 20 snaps, even if it's just like pass rush packages, right? Like I'm okay with keeping him off the field on like 1st and 10, second and 4, rundowns. but I want to see him out there on basically every third and long, pass rush downs, right? And so if you can just get him back in those packages, I think your pressure game is going to change completely. And we're going to go from seeing, like, you're going to end up by the end of the season seeing the Saints be like middle of the pack from a pressure percentage perspective. That's very alliterated. I needed to enunciate. And that would be a sign of drastic improvement, because right now they are 31st in the NFL in pressure percentage. And 5 weeks of a season is it's a long time to try to correct the stats. So they're not going to be a team that's in the top 10 in terms of pressures by the end of the year. But I think they should be able to climb up in the middle of the pack, because that was him last year. Like, wouldn't you kill right now for a guy who was just getting a bunch of pressure, even if he wasn't getting to the quarterback? Because that's been the issue, is like on the plays you don't get sacks, you don't get there at all. Like even Jackson Dart last week, it was like, man, he's just standing there for a long time. If he had a single wide receiver like Malik Neighbors, he would find him, because Malik's going to get open. Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, like, these guys aren't getting open downfield. Malik Neighbors would have feasted with that amount of time last week.
And the good news is Drake May's second most sacked QB in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is extension. It's play extension. And that's what, my X factor is, can you keep him in the pocket? Can you force him to operate from within the pocket? Because, and I don't know, maybe this was just a last week thing. Maybe he was inspired by Josh Allen and he played a lot more like Josh Allen last week. But a lot of the Patriots' big plays last week were, hey, I'm Drake May, and I'm going to extend the play to the sideline. And by the time I get to the sideline, I expect someone to be open. And a lot of times they were. And a lot of times it was Stefan Diggs on kind of those comeback routes, working back to the quarterback. And then he was able to spin out, pick up 10, 15 yards. Like, he had a really nice throw downfield to Stefan Diggs on kind of on a corner route. And he's able to throw that ball on the run very, very well. And I just, I don't want to see the Saints get burned by that repeatedly. Like, any young quarterback, I don't want to let them do the comfortable thing. We kind of talked about this yesterday on WWL. Like, I want to force him to do what young quarterbacks don't want to do, which is navigate within the pocket, step up in the pocket, operate on schedule. Young quarterbacks love to play off schedule. Young quarterbacks love to play that kind of backyard, schoolyard football. And you saw Jackson Dart last week. When you forced him to try to play on schedule, he didn't do it. He scrambled, he picked up yards that way, but he didn't look comfortable when he was within the pocket. And Drake May is way further along in his development than Jackson Dart, but I'm still playing him as a young quarterback and saying, hey, if you can hang in that pocket as you got bodies falling all around you and deliver the ball on time, on target, good on you, kid. But I'm going to force you to do it. And that's my X factor. Can you force him to do that? Or are you constantly chasing him to the edges of the field and allowing his receivers to kind of play that scramble drill? Because I don't think the Saints are going to win if they allow that to happen time after time after time after time. And so that's my X factor. Is, can you generate pressure, but do it under control and force him to live inside the pocket? Or
chuck up some interceptions. That'd be nice.
Yeah, keep those turnovers coming. Yeah. I mean, but it's funny. And the X Factor segment kind of has the same blind spot as our stock up, stock down segment, in that we never talk about takeaways, because takeaways are the ultimate X Factor always.
Right.
So talking about them as an X Factor in a game is kind of redundant in terms of like, yeah, you always want takeaways.
Right. It's like, no, duh. Yeah, you need the takeaways.
When you can be the team that wins the turnover margin, you're going to win a high percentage of the time. And maybe not +1, but when you're +2, +3, heck, +5, you shouldn't lose games. So, and that's more of an offensive, and it's tough because that's a dual X factor, right? Because you could take the ball away 5 times. If you turn the ball over 4 times, it's a wash, right? So winning the turnover battle is on both sides of the ball. I also think this is, and I've said this a few times, it's a big week for Blake Grupe. It's a big week for the special teams group in general.
You mentioned Grupe too. To me, this is a massive game for him. You can't get a miss here and then keep saying we believe in Blake. He's our guy. At some point, it's like, well, you're gonna have to look at Charlie Smith, I feel like.
Yeah, it's tough because your Blake is in a situation now where every miss is going to be magnified.
Oh yeah,
and it's really unfair because like kickers are going to miss occasionally.
But that was reverse in training camp with Smith. We were on him for how inconsistent he was, and Blake was.
Yeah, I know. And this isn't a competition anymore. It's more so just this is your job and how are you handling it? But yeah, no, I mean, like, but that's a product of your own creation, and if here's the thing, if his misses are coming from 50 plus, I can live with it. Like
Right,
that's
I was just about to say, if you're missing from 45, we got to talk.
Yeah, the miss from 52, that was like, okay, you already hit from 53. It was a close miss. It's not like he just shanked it. Like it had a little too much pull from it. If it was a kick from 46, it probably would have gone in. And those are the misses that I'm like, all right, you're not going to be 100% from 50 plus. You can accept it. It's like you still want those kicks to go in, but like if those are the misses, that's not the sign of like, we got to go a different direction and kicker. Kicks from 46, and I only say 46 because that was the kick.
Yeah.
Kicks from that range and in, they got to be like 99% kicks. Like you can't be missing those kicks. And I think the miss from 46 was directly related to the miss from 52 because he was overcorrecting for the miss from 52 and he missed something. Like he missed left from 52 and he overcorrected and he missed right from 46. It was also weird because he was late getting out there, and I don't know what was going on there, but yeah, it's a big game for him. There's no question. And you just need to make your kicks, man. Just make your kicks. And if he has a couple games where he makes all his kicks and then, eventually, inevitably he misses another one and you can be like, okay, it's like you're going to miss some. He just needs to get on a run and build some confidence. And if he
we're
can't,
home in the dome. The only thing blowing is the AC.
Right. You got to be able to make these at home. No question. If you miss on the road and it's windy, you're like, okay, fine. But if you have another game where you just look inconsistent and you're missing all over the map, you got to start thinking about making that change. And it's got to start becoming a realistic conversation because you just can't be giving up that much value on like special teams in general. It's not just Blake. It's that entire phase that has not been good enough. So be better. All right. Anything else before we close this thing out?
No, man. Looking forward to being back in the dome Sunday. And, we got to take advantage against a team that is gaining their momentum and they're feeling confident right now after a big win in Buffalo. But hell, we're coming off the victory 2 against the Giants, and we've heard a lot about stacking. Well, those levels, they need to stack the wins for sure this week before you start looking at back-to-back games on the road.
Also, stop robbing the Jordan's house. What the hell, man? I don't know. I'm making a joke about it, but it's not a joke. It's a scary situation. So, I'm glad they caught the people who did it. But yeah, Cam was talking about it in the locker room yesterday. And just like,
you got to figure, you big dummies, you don't think that place has got great security around it? I would hope so.
He said that, he said it was on the record so I could share it. Like he said that they have ADT and it never went off. And they broke, like they used a crowbar on the back door to get in. And it did not set off their home security system.
Well, that's a terrible commercial for ADT.
Not a great commercial for ADT. But that's a crappy feeling, man. Like I had my home robbed a long time ago while we were in the house asleep. This is back when I lived in
that's
Connecticut,
extra
my parents'
creepy.
house. And someone just went in and took a bunch of stuff off the kitchen table. Like my mom had a nice camera at that point, which at that point a nice camera was expensive.
Yeah.
And they just kind of took it. And the next day I came home and we had a dog. Like my mom went to the shelter and was like, all right, dog time, because we hadn't had a dog for like a year at that point because our other dog had died and they're like, we're not ready. But yeah, it was a dog. It was a 100-pound chocolate lab named RD. Never did find out what RD stood for. The vet told us it should stand for razzle dazzle, but yeah, and we didn't get robbed again. But we did put those stickers, those like fake stickers on the doors that said like, home security. Just
well, that was RD doing his job.
Yeah. We were too cheap to pay for a home security system, but we were willing to go buy the stickers to put them on the door just so anyone was like, I don't want to mess with that absolute security, that made up security system that we that we bought stickers for. But yeah. Anyway, that's the story.
Yeah, I can imagine just, a little the creepiness. I've had my car broken into and you just feel violated.
Yeah, you don't feel safe at home, and that's not what you want. So I'm glad they caught those guys. They were from Atlanta, I believe, which I don't know. I think I might have made that up. But either way,
it sounds like there's a Falcons joke in there somewhere.
There's a lot of Falcons joking here. They found the inmate in Atlanta, the
I saw
escaped
that,
inmate
right.
in Atlanta.
He had a great
the,
lead.
The arresting officer made a Falcons joke about it, which good for him. Way to land the plane. Yeah, I think Rod Walker tweeted, it's like, had a big lead, went to Atlanta and blew it. Anyway, all right. That was a weird right turn on this preview episode.
You
but
never
we're going to
know.
close it out there. What better way to end a podcast than talking about escaped inmates getting arrested in Atlanta? Yeah. Who dat? Go Saints. Beat
Dub
Patriots
number
again.
2. Let's go.
Drop a deuce on them. All right. Who dat? Subscribe. See y'all.